The chair will entertain a motion
So move for the agenda.
on the agenda. Moved by Mr. Tisdale, seconded by Mr. Lawrence. All in favor? Those opposed? We'll go ahead and begin the workshop.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think, a while back we had been talking about when is the best position to move forward on some projects, and the funding of those projects, the interest rate being down. It's just, the most favorable time to borrow money. Over the course of, since January, we talked about a couple of areas. First, infrastructure, the main infrastructure part of the thing we've been trying to deliver through raised grants and through some other things that we have not been successful, is the extension of Pops Ferry Road. That I think in total is about $13 or $14 million that we need to, complete. Again, we were hopeful that, we've been.
How much was that, Mayor?
13 million. I'm sorry?
How much was it?
13 million total that's left. So we had some acquisitions, we did some engineering, it is shovel ready. We've done everything 3 years in a row, and we've been the bridesmaid 3 years in a row with the raise grant. Now, I'm not sure from exactly the properties, but we're hopeful that we've already matched up in order to complete. We've got about 10 properties over five owners as far as the acquisition. We've got the design almost shovel ready. We're just lacking the total funding of 13 point something, say 14 million total. But we're hopeful that a number of dollars, like 4 point something million, would come from Gulf Regional, another 2 from the county. Our part sort of computed to be 7 million. That was the infrastructure part of this borrowing, the general asked to get us positioned to borrow the money, set up a bond either 15 or 20 years, between 2 or 2.25. I think that's where we would be. So of that 17 million that was mentioned, I think 7 million for infrastructure, the primary, and things can change if we're successful in getting other funding sources for that 7 million. We won't borrow 7 million, but we could point it to other places. And I think everyone has suggestions on what we need to do. But the primary goal of that ask that you approved, I guess the state bank that we did very well with up there last week, the first step, the initial step that gives us the authority to move forward, and they gave us the blessing. I think Jason Thomas and Lindsay and everything appeared at that committee that you approved the last go-around. That 7 million it would be for infrastructure. Of course, we've got the other part of that 7 million, or another 7 million, would be the improvements to A.J. Holloway. We've got some folks from the engineering firm can talk a little bit about that, but that's about 7 million, and then actually a little bit less than that. But we have mentioned other improvements for recreation, Hiller Park, other places. So while we're borrowing, let's have enough power to go for it. So the two big projects, in my estimation, was the 7 and the 7. That's not 17, but again, when the bids come and the estimations come, we're not going to borrow more than that. We're hopefully not to borrow that if we're successful in getting other funding sources. And I don't, there are a number of them from a number of places. But, that's my story, and, I'm happy to answer any questions. But, again, half of it, 7, another 7 for recreation, primarily the 6.5 to enhance the complex we have that will actually generate enough money. Now, as far as the debt service, I've left you some numbers in general. Couple of ways.
Mayor, let me just interrupt you. Let me take your opening remarks of your mayor's report, and let's conclude that and go around, get the council reports out of the way, and then we'll get to the discussion part.
Very good. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council reports, Mr. Lawrence.
Yeah, on the 7 million, I can see it for the road. That's going to run to Highway 90.
That's it.
Okay, let's open that up. That's good for us.
Yep.
All right. 7 million on the ball fields at AJ the park. What is $7 million worth of what?
Well, again, you're asking me what does that consist of? I think we had some preliminary design of David, but basically it's to cover surface.
Let the chair interrupt for a second. Mr. Lawrence, if I may, and we'll get to you at the first part of the discussion. Let's get out of the formality of just council reports and public citizens' comments, and then we'll get into the discussion part, if you will. With all due respect. Okay.
Yeah.
No comment for me.
All right. Ms. Newman?
No report.
I have no report. Need a motion, well, for citizen comment, we have 45 minutes, 3 minutes total. Is there anyone would like to speak from the audience? There being none, we'll move on to the policy agenda. Need a motion to open discussion for the policy agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Tisdale, seconded by Mr. Lawrence, and as promised, Mr. Lawrence, you have the floor.
So now we have our discussion.
You got it.
All right. So the 7 million on the ball fields, I'd like to know how we're gonna spend that. That's a lot of money to upgrade them fields.
It is. Again, no money's been spent out there. And again, our initial guessing was it was 6.5, if you want to follow up with this. But, and we've talked a little bit about the improvements to Hiller and some of these other recreational facilities, pickleball. We may be getting some money from other sources for pickleball. But basically, if we have to do it all ourselves, 7 million was a rounded figure. I think 6.5 to the improvements of all the fields, and the soccer fields as well as the softball and baseball field, and those improvements. 6.5, another $500,000 for recreation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hey, Nick Moody with Machado Botano. So, yeah, we looked at a study for the A.J. Holloway complex, and we looked at several options. The main options we looked at is improving, the play of the fields, meaning, over at the soccer and football, there's been some drainage issues over there. The fields stay incredibly wet, especially when we get a rain like we did this morning and last night. So on that area, the northwest corner, we looked at, replacing one field with synthetic turf, and then while we're over there, also improving the drainage between the fields, where each field drains to the low areas where there's some drainage system in both of those fields. So those, based on our analysis, those fields stay incredibly wet in between. We're looking at improving that drainage, and then also where it discharges into a drainage ditch, looking at clearing that up. It stays, water stays collected. There's a lot of trash, debris, vegetation. Cleaning that up. That was kind of one aspect of it. And then moving over to the Little League fields, we looked at replacing the natural turf and dirt in the infield with synthetic turf play, and then also redoing the outfield with a new sod and drainage system to make those fields, a lot better playable for years to come. You're looking probably, the turf, you get an 8-year warranty. You're looking at maybe a replacement of 10 years. On the infield. Of course, that cost reduces dramatically because all the drainage improvements and infrastructure is already in place. And then going to the south of the complex, we looked at turfing the softball playing fields, the dirt. I know when we have rain events like we did this morning, a lot of that dirt material ends up running off into the drainage system, into the concrete. There's a consistent maintenance issue for that as far as the dirt. So replacing that with synthetic turf, and then looking at the high school field, regulation field, doing synthetic turf in the infield only, and then looking at one of the softball fields, making that a versatile field to play from all age groups, from Little League all the way up to high school. We would move the fence out and make that a high school regulation field. In doing that, this gives you, the complex, a lot of versatility for tournaments that are happening all over the southeast. So I think that kind of touches on some of the income that.
Let me add, in general, you correct me if I'm wrong. It's to get our facilities up to competitiveness with anybody around. After we do this, we'll be as strong as anyone to attract, and even in conjunction with the golf course. These two facilities together could really, hit a different level. But also, you mentioned some of the things that, instead of, would it be fair to say we will reduce our manpower exposure by about 50%? So if you look at where we are long term, in the scope of things, generating the new business, but also fading the expense that we're doing now if we do nothing. Is that right?
So your engineer's estimate of probable cost for that work you just described was how much?
6.2.
6.2 million.
That also addresses, one thing I didn't touch on is some needed parking out there, in my opinion. So we looked at areas that we could easily add some parking. We're adding about 130-something spaces additional.
And I know, Mr. Lawrence, you have the floor, but I just want to, I've been out there constantly, and this isn't a Ward 6 facility. This is a Biloxi facility. We had over 300 boys and girls sign up for Little League Baseball alone, and they've been out there all this week, and they deserve to be playing on the fields that our counterparts in Ocean Springs, Jackson County, Gulfport, and other areas. And then we deserve to have that image when we host these tournaments, that they come and they see a first-class, tournament play versus something that they're not used to seeing. So thank you for allowing me a couple of seconds there, Mr. Lawrence.
There's a couple of things to go back to full Little League field. What are you doing to them? That's where you got to fix that.
It's exactly.
5 Little League fields.
Yeah, replacing the natural playing surface, meaning turf and dirt in the infield, with a synthetic turf system, and then replacing the outfield with natural, it'll be natural sod and outfield, but putting in a drainage system that will, underneath it, that will help.
What's the expense of keeping up the turf? It only lasts for 7, 8 years.
That's the warranty. The warranty is 8 years. Certainly, the life depends on how much play you're going to get, but we estimate, 10 years at least. And like I said, once you install it, the drainage, all the infrastructure is in for the turf. You're just basically replacing the turf at that point, which is like half the cost.
Basically material, not the base or anything. So I mean, replacement is a percentage, of that would be 50% more, whatever it would be. Yeah.
That's correct. And I'll also point out, the rain event we had this morning, the fields are closed this afternoon. Practice is canceled. Everything out, the complex is closed. I think doing, these type of improvements gives you a chance to allow kids to still get out there on an evening like, that's going to be a nice evening like today. Especially for T-ballers. They don't need much space. They can practice it. They can still get on the infield, a synthetic turf infield, no matter how much rain you get. So
how many fields are you going to put the natural turf on?
All of them will have natural turf. What we're proposing, all of them will have natural turf in the outfield.
Yeah, I mean, with the new, how much is that going to cost, just the turf? That's pretty expensive to buy. So how many you doing, 9 fields?
No.
5 for the boys and 4 for the girls?
Yep. For the improvements were at the Little League are 1.6 million. Now, if you want to look at turfing all those, the whole field, all of them, you're looking at 2.6.
Infield and outfield.
Infield and outfield.
I know they said the girls had a problem with their drainage, softball fields, because the dirt goes out. Going back to the other thing, when you said, are you going to fix all the drainage before we do anything else? And where are we going to run that to? Because they put all this stuff on wetlands. That's our problem. Everything was built on wetlands. That's one of the problems we've had. So what is that drainage problem we have before we do anything else? Can we fix the drainage problem and move the water?
Yeah, so I touched on that at the beginning. Over at the softball complex is where that discharges into a drainage ditch there to the south of the football and softball complex. That needs to be cleaned up and allow for positive drainage through there. And then we're also looked at replacing.
The football field, talking about Biloxi High football field?
I'm talking about the soccer complex, where they play soccer and football. And then where it drains, there's collector pipes in between each of those fields. A perforated drain system, French drain system is totally redoing that. And I think that system's clogged, and compounded with the drainage ditch that's backing up, I think that's what allows those fields to stay wet all the time. So,
yeah. So
over in that area, that's the first thing we would do in that area.
Yeah.
Now, talking about going to the softball, there's not necessarily a drainage issue over there. It's just basically the material just runs off of the softball playing surface and then gets into the drainage system.
Well, we put turf in that, would that stop that?
Yeah, because what the turf system would allow is allow the water, instead of just running off, to go down into a drainage system below the turf and then tie into a drainage system.
And you said something about building another field. What you talking about, building another field?
Not building another field, modifying an existing softball field to make it not only just play for softball, but versatile with high school, from Little League all the way down up to high school. And to do that, we'd have to just move the outfield fence out a little bit further.
Yeah, more depth.
Yeah, correct.
So that way, anybody can play on that softball field, girls wise. You got to go to 250 or bigger.
Well, the 300 now,
300.
so we're looking at making it, 320 down the line, maybe there's 370 in center field for high school play.
Oh, you talking about baseball?
Yeah, but you can still play any age group on there. You could put temporary fencing up.
Basically converting one softball field into a high school baseball configuration.
Correct. But you can
But you
still
can play softball.
You can
So,
still use it for.
So how much is that going to cost? So what are we doing it for? Making another baseball field? One field, I'm talking about, not a little league. not-
Two fully baseball field, high school capable baseball fields to couple it with some of the tournaments that we may be having in the future. You couple with the Biloxi high school situation, so you would be able to play tournaments, the real tournaments, yeah. So it's that we lose one softball field to a baseball configuration, but you can still play softball in all three of them. I mean, all
correct.
Yeah, but that's a lot of money to do a baseball
The
field.
total thing, I mean, everything's a lot of money. Again, you estimated 6.2 to what we're talking about.
Yeah, man, that's a lot of money for adding one field that you can't do that many tournaments on them fields anyway. I mean, I'm talking about the baseball fields. That's not many people come
But
to
we
do
can't
that.
do anything now.
You got the little league and the softball, they come and grow. So I don't know about that. How much money are we talking about doing that with that field?
750,000.
That baseball field, where y'all talking about?
750,000.
How much?
750. But that includes turf in the infield.
Yeah, not a big fan of that. I could see taking care of the kids. The other thing, I don't see where we're going with that one.
I mean, we're talking about extending the fence and locating some lights, so you're talking about a couple $100,000 to expand the field for Biloxi High, where they'll host a tournament high school team, have two fields going on simultaneously. While you still be able to also use it for softball, that's what you're gonna do behind the softball field, you're just making it versatile.
Yeah,
You could do both.
You-
In the event that you had that need.
you really have three baseball fields going simultaneously, high school plus the two. Correct.
That's correct.
Well, the high school, that's the baseball connected Biloxi High, then they need to do that. Not us. That's the school system thing. That's nothing to do with us. So, I mean,
Well, again, the purpose is, we're coming back, Jason's here from a bonding standpoint. We preliminary came up with, 6.2, really, not at this point in time, based on what the design is, but, the borrowing power was 7 million, to do that thing specifically and other things, as we roll it out. So that's the answer. We can do a lot of things and we can, iterate what is the best bang for the buck. We came up with a plan that would be competitive to everybody else on the coast and reduce the amount of maintenance that we would face on a daily basis and provide availability for the people who participate, practice night and day, and again, reducing our ongoing exposure and spreading it over 20 years. So, I mean, it's not like we're going to do all this overnight, and we would, again, propose these bond issues or these monies to be, what can we do as fast as we can do it, and this is the payback in status of operation and ability to go get new business.
Just the mayor is aware that these are not the only recreational facilities in the city that need help, which is why he didn't ask for 6.2 million. He proposed 7 million, because we know we've got issues in Hiller Park, and we know we've got issues in Pops Ferry Park. So this is not going to be just this one-shot deal. One of the biggest mistakes, I'm told, that cities make when they borrow money is not borrowing enough, and then having to not be able to do what you intended to do.
well, that's easy to say that, but you gotta pay it back, I don't care what you borrow, you still gotta pay it back. It don't
Well,
matter. You you borrow 10 million or 30 million, you got a note you got to pay.
You want to talk about paying it back right now, or you want to talk about it later? You know, we could, this, I mean, all right, then the second part of the workshop, I'm prepared to talk about that.
Yeah, let's,
the subject we're on, we're talking about the field. I don't see why we should. Barry Lyons, the only one running if they won the baseball field that wouldn't.
Well, whatever, you know.
Okay, wait a minute. Let me finish. I mean, that's not going to create any money for anybody.
I respectfully disagree with you. I disagree with you on that. It's not going to create any money. It is going to create business.
It don't create nothing.
Okay.
all right.
And it hadn't yet. Little League will bring people in, girls softball bring people in, that's fine. And on $750 for that, you did 10 times better. And all the pickle courts you can, pickleball courts. That's what you need there. That is 52 weeks a year, pickleball. You can make the one in Pops Ferry, 24.
That's part of the $7 million plan. You're just on baseball right now. That's part of the $7 million plan to put,
I'm just saying, if you want to do something, you're talking about economic.
We are talking about doing that.
10 times better and all that stuff put together. You got an
You're
age
in
group
favor of putting $7 million in the pickleball?
You have an age group that has
You
money.
think that would make sense? Put $7 million in pickleball? It's all part of the plan. A lot of it is pickleball.
Didn't say $7 million, Fofo. You said that. I didn't say that.
That's what we're talking about. Okay.
All right, Mr. Lawrence, let's go ahead, finish up, and we'll come back to you. But let's give some of the other council members a chance.
We're going to spend that kind of money. You need to add pickleball in. You need to add 12.
It's in the plan.
Yeah, 12.
Pickleball is in the plan.
Yeah, but I mean, we need to do it. You're going to waste $750,000 on a ball field. I'd rather put that towards pickleball courts. Those will create more traffic, more money than all that other stuff put together.
Okay. Mr. Guines?
Yeah, I just wanted to put in a bid for a couple of things while we're at it, and I believe the A.J. Holloway field is definitely something that we need to keep that up and take care of it. We look at all the sports and recreation, and I think we're talking about softball, we're talking about pickleball, we got football that's going on, and we also have basketball. And if we look at the basketball season that we got going on right now, all the kids are at the Snyder Center. So you have kids that migrate from one end of the town to the extreme end of the other end of the town. And so I would like to consider maybe a PEB, a pre-engineered building, maybe putting up over at the, the field behind the Croc Center. Maybe looking at $1 million, just like Mike Leonard said. You know, we don't invest enough in our people, and if we can put a nice pre-engineered building up, give it a good brick front, that we can also use it for rental and things like that, where we can bring in revenue, but also our kids won't have to go to one end of the town to the extreme other end of the town to participate in the recreational sports, such as basketball. You know, so that's just my take on that we may want to consider doing something like that. Thank you.
Ms. Newman?
I'm just in shock that we have someone who's yelling that we need to be for the citizens, yet we're going to discriminate against those citizens' children. But whatever. I think there's a lot of needs in the city, and I would like to see money going towards each pot. Definitely we need some more facilities, even in East Biloxi. We need to do with the park as well, my park and Hiller Park. It's very widely used. It's a 101-acre park. You know, we can make all these upgrades, but let's not forget about the streets and drainage. That is what affects everybody's day of life. If the streets and drainage are working, then people are pretty much happy, as well as it invites more investment in the city. So let's just try to throw some money, you know, at every problem we have, which is, you know, it's going to be a lot, but we got to make some effort. Litter.
Okay. Mr. Tisdale?
Yes, here prioritizing needs in Ward 5. The first is Station 5. I think we've got that designed already, and I'm thinking, I don't know what it would cost to add. I believe it was 4 bedrooms, maybe a little more floor space, but they're jammed in there. So since we already have, I think, the plans drawn up, as I recall,
Not final, but
not final, but I'm thinking planning and design and go ahead and finish upgrading that station there for those firefighters. That would be the number one item. The next two things, the Enclave Petty Boy drainage ditch, near and dear to Mr. Leonard's heart and my heart. And I'm thinking just maybe for planning and design there at this point. And the same thing for the Churchill drainage ditch. I mean, we've tried some Band-Aids over the years, but I'm just thinking if it was effectively planned and designed, it would probably solve a number of issues. One, they really need a sidewalk there. Two, you've got the erosion of the banks. Three, it fills with sediment. I know we tried that netting and some rock at the bottom years ago, but that rock's now probably under a foot or a foot and a half of sand. So that just, and then the drainage issue when it runs off out of Bay Vista subdivision, if the ditch is full of water, there's no place for that drainage water to go. So it's just, I'm thinking planning and design there, what would be the best way to resolve that issue? We had talked about piping it at one time, but that reduces the drainage flow, which would back up in other neighborhoods surrounding that. A couple of things, when I hear artificial turf, there are a lot of advantages to that, but if you're going to have turf, I would suggest that some money be allocated to some sort of brushing device. You need to do that to get the litter and all that other good stuff.
Yeah, generally when a contractor comes in and completes a project, they provide a piece of equipment to maintain the fields, and they give a commissioning with the city and the staff to how to maintain and upkeep on the turf fields.
Gotcha. And from what you said, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Nick Moody.
I thought that was you behind that beard, but I hadn't seen you in a while. Heck. And I wasn't sure. Some fields, the infield will be synthetic turf, and other fields, maybe the entire field would be. No, just infield synthetic turf.
We looked at both ways, but we feel like the most feasible way is the infield is the most important part of the baseball field to get on and practice. So doing that as synthetic turf will allow, play on it generally all year round.
Gotcha.
Depending on the rain event you get. So that's why we focused on just doing the infield.
And did I understand that there would be a new field proposed?
No, it's just a modification to one of the softball fields.
Right.
And to touch on that, Mr. George, it's not, the field wouldn't just be strictly for high school play. When you do synthetic turf, you could put multiple base lengths to accommodate all age groups. The only thing you have to do is just add temporary fencing in the outfield to shorten the fence. And we just played in a tournament in Gulfport, and they do that all the time. So those fields are just not going to be strictly for high school play. You can do any age group on them. So the turf allows you to use those fields a lot more than what they're being used today. So.
Yeah, we played in a lot of fields like that where they just adjusted from 250, 350, 400, whatever they do. We did a lot of traveling with the girls. We played in fields like that and brought them in, depending on the size, 9 to 12, 12 to 13, 13 to 15, 16 to 18. Everything fluctuates, But me, I'm just not interested in redoing something for Biloxi High or anybody else. So we're not gaining anything from that. That's how I look at that. And yeah, I'd rather put that money in pickleball in a heartbeat. They will bring you a ton of money to your city. And if you get a destination, Biloxi, as the pickleball capital of the world, they'll be flocking in there. They're doing it already. And that's what you got to pay attention to. Not against fixing up the Little League field, not against fixing up the softball field. We need an upgrade, and we definitely need the drainage. And you need more parking. I mean, that's all part of the complex.
I'm gonna allow Mr. Tisdale, he has 2 more points to finish.
Right. Are we looking to ask the school district to contribute anything?
We're looking to ask a lot of folks to contribute. This is, if we were to do it all, on our own. And the same thing with infrastructure. Had other sources come about, we're not gonna borrow. I think Jason has provided some information about if we went and got $17 million, in general, we could probably service the debt for 1.1 million.
So
1.2 million. If it were all infrastructure, then we would have some things offset, but we also have some millage that would be rolling off that would, you know. if we-
Hold that thought. I have one more question. And I thought, I don't see Peter here. Oh, there he is in the back, lurking. I'm wondering, does this present any Title IX issues? I don't think it does, but if I understood correctly, the girls have their own softball field for the school district, and so do the boys, but I'm also, and I don't think there is, but I'm thinking if you look to improve some of those current fields, maybe the softball field that's farthest south, I mean, it's got to be, I'm just concerned that there may be some Title IX issues out there. It doesn't sound like it, but I'm no Title IX expert. Peter, have you heard anything that, okay. All right, well, you got time to bone up on that. Thank you. That concludes my questions. Thank you.
Okay, I do have some remarks. Again, this, we had some discussion months ago about our Biloxi Sportsplex, and we saw the drone come out, state-of-the-art drone, come and do some surveys and everything. We were waiting for the report to come from Machado and Patana, and we got that report. We really appreciate the hard work that you did. This is an investment in Biloxi, and I think when we get hung up on pickleball and other areas, we're not going to neglect other areas in pickleball. We know the value of pickleball. I've played in those pickleball tournaments. I go out to the ones on in different areas, and it's growing, no doubt. It's growing. It's becoming popular. It's going to be something that we need to make sure that's in the fabric of Biloxi. But what we have today is this first project that has been, lack of a better word, bundled into this bond issue for the extension of the road and other purposes. And all we're trying to do is pinpoint, look, we could spend double that at the Biloxi Sportsplex, and it still wouldn't be enough. But I think the plan that we came up with was to put some synthetic turf in the infields first, put some, cure the drainage in the outfields and put the right turf out there and the right systems, expand the capabilities of those parks. So we just had two, Battle of the Bay, and then the other battle of the baseball tournament. The MGM Park's not always going to be available, but you definitely can host many of these tournaments. The maintenance, I don't know if y'all did an analysis on the annual maintenance savings. I don't know if that's in your report or if that needs to be a supplemental report. But as I understand it, by going to synthetic, by improving the drainage, it reduces our maintenance cost out there dramatically. I'll try to finish up. If you go to the opening day at Gulfport, go see what they're playing on. Go look at Gulfport Sportsplex and watch what those kids are enjoying, those families are enjoying. If you go to Jackson County, go to the Ocean Springs fields and see what facility that they're playing on. D'Iberville built a new sportsplex. Pretty impressive. You did that, okay? Yeah. You got that on the fence or whatever? I did that or anything? But what I'm trying to say is our image is important. Our kids, it's an investment in our kids and our families. It lifts our community. It lifts the value of where you're going to live, the quality of life of where you want to live, and where else would you want to live than right here in Biloxi versus Gulfport, Ocean Springs, D'Iberville, Gaucher, or somewhere else. And believe me, I know it may not be a big part of a lot of families, but it is a big part of many families that get their kids engaged in basketball, soccer, baseball, football, pickleball even has got a junior league that they're starting. And I hope we don't lose sight of this. We were all excited a couple months ago, and we all said, yeah, we can support this, it's good for the kids. And it's becoming muddied a little bit because we've expanded this bond, and it includes it in the whole umbrella of this thing. And this is just one part, big part, but it's one part of it. We can shift gears some conversation on the other part of it. And Mr. Tisdale, if you want to talk about the possible extension or anything like that, you can leave the second part of this.
I think the mayor has a good plan. I mean, if we can get this extension done, have it designated as a state road, I think is the term. I think as Ms. Newman mentioned, drainage. That we've all got issues with drainage. Lord knows we never have enough money in the paving account. There's lots of stuff that can be paved. We've got the West Biloxi master plan that we're looking at projects we need to do. So there's plenty of projects out there.
This specific, ask to execute this extension is transformational, because we have some possibilities of getting, instead of doing the whole 7, we could have some support in other places. But we also have the possibility from the money that had been designated for infrastructure to match up. We've had a couple of projects, maybe 10 or 15 million in West Biloxi, or maybe even more than that. But the possibility of matching up our ARPA money with whatever the legislature to handle drainage, to handle pure infrastructure stuff that we need to do. 2 different issues is what I'm saying, but it's all, we're trying to manage the whole groups. I mean, the $7 million project that we're, worst case scenario, we're going to borrow $7 million to execute that is transformational, both traffic and business development opportunity, as well as position us for a state road designation when it ties into Highway 90.
Please keep in mind that while we're sitting here discussing this bond, the Fed is meeting and will raise rates this quarter, and again in the next quarter, and again in the next quarter. So we need to come to I know it feels good to talk about these projects, but we really need to press to reach the point of knowing how much do we want to borrow, because that rate's changing. The mayor ran the rates at 2.25 earlier. I mean, that's what we're guessing we're going to be borrowing at. But that 2.25 is not going to hold very long. So I think, again, one of our objectives in these workshops early on is to determine how much do we want to borrow. And as I said earlier, I've been told by financial wizards that the mistake a lot of cities make is not borrowing enough, and then upset with themselves have to go back to the
Ms. Newman, you got anything on the Pops Ferry extension, or, because that's another big part of this. It's not everything in it, but it's a big part of it.
Seven and 7, but Jason will kind of, we had in our previous motion 17 million. I think he can kind of do some research, or he has done some research on, hey, 2.25 seemed to be magical, and I just pull it out of the air, didn't I, Jason?
We're going to get to the financial part of it, but I just want to get to the overview. Do you have anything on the Pops Ferry extension or any of those elements, the infrastructure?
I think what y'all should do is come to us and say, you know what, we would like to borrow 17 million, and I would like to see this much go to this much go to that. Have us a list so we can see exactly what you're proposing, because we can do this all day long. I want this, he wants that, he wants that. Show us what you want to do, how much you want to spend at the sports complex, on the bridge, on Hiller Park exactly, how much would you like to go towards the drainage, things like that.
We can give you a
and then we can maybe go off of that. I mean, and it matters too. Okay, so if we get 17 million, how much is the bond payment going to be?
Right.
So then we can look at that. If we borrow 15 million, how much is the bond payment going to be? Yeah.
We'll get to that. Felix?
Yeah, and I agree with Ms. Newman. The magic number for me, and what Mike Leonard was talking about, is 17 to 19 is what I think we ought to look at. 17 to 19, and let's, Oh, we can't go more than 17?
17, but that's plenty.
Oh, not to exceed.
That's plenty.
That's plenty.
That's plenty.
Okay.
And
We're going to get to a financial part. I want the mayor to chime
Yeah,
in on
and
that.
just, and like she said, just kind of give us a semi-itemized list, and let's rock and roll.
Right.
All right. Mr. Lawrence?
17 million, is that 1.1 to pay it back? Is that a 20-year note?
20 years, 1.1 at 2.25.
That's what it is today. That will change, of course, as we go forward, but without even talking to the mayor, looking at market information today, that's what I came up with.
Right.
I mean, thank
So,
you.
again, my itemized list to me would be, if he asked me to do it this afternoon before I walked out, would be 7 million for infrastructure, 7 million for recreation. That's only 14. But $500,000 of the 6.2, the rest would be recreation to be delineated. So I mean,
Like
we
a
need-
more detailed one, that
yeah,
way.
we could do that.
Okay.
I'm telling you, I mean, that's what we want to do. But we need to get our, our ask out there, and we'll figure out. Just like the paving bond, we knew what we were going to do. More than 19 million, we still got a little bit left. It's the same thing, but we got to get rolling, and I think that's the point. The point, and we're positioned in a lot. And I'm going to talk a little bit about infrastructure. Whatever we do in infrastructure, we've got some commitments. New business coming from the use tax, okay? That could be done without, in the other business, from recreation, the $7 million for recreation, that debt service could be anywhere from 400,000 or 500,000. That's less than $1 million. We have some millage opportunity that's going to roll out when we spend it. So no millage increase, and no specific debt, commitment to doing infrastructure, because we're going to utilize sort of a relatively new tax. It's the internet sales tax that are coming our way to the tune of about $1.3 million a year. That's uncommitted. So now's the time to commit. We could dedicate that $400,000 or $500,000 to do whatever infrastructure we needed to do. And that's not the whole thing. We could actually do a lot more. With that 1.2, we could fund $17 million worth of infrastructure if I wanted to commit that, because that's what we're going to plan on. But so we're going to come up with a specific ask for next crowd. We'll do your report on what we're seeing, and we'll each one, we'll kind of guesstimate what these things that have been mentioned today would cost. I know they've done a tremendous job on detailing out what needs to be done, and I still believe we need to do that to A.J. Holloway Park, and we'll give you some offset. Because if you do nothing, it's still going to cost you $200. It's about 14 men that we use, Sherry, and that's 14 men that we use to 14 men and women. So that costs us money too. There's an offset. So I'll come with a detailed plan. We just need to be prepared, so this guy can go move forward. And it may be less than 17 million, but 17 million is not to exceed.
I'd also like to request, it would really be appreciated if like each ward would get a certain amount for paving. And now we can choose that amount for what streets we would like to get repaved.
Well, that's true too, but I don't want to box myself in this deal, because I think we're going to get some infrastructure money out of the state that's been done. So, but we need to figure out what you need in each,
Because we're always arguing what street needs it more, or what, you know what I mean? And then we get pinned by the citizens. We don't care about them if we're not able to provide something.
I'm happy to do
So
that.
if we could each get, I don't know, maybe 200,000, and we can choose what we want to do with that 200,000, that would help alleviate a lot of the.
That's doable. I could put 1.4.
Just keep that into consideration. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
That's again part of the ballgame.
Come back to you, spend every dime of that. Remember, we have to package projects.
The only problem is there's so many needs, and I'm not against whatever his need is in his ward, you know what I mean? So I'm not going to vote against his need. However, I have needs too. That's what I'm saying. Instead of us fighting over these buckets that y'all keep bringing, if we could have divided evenly and we get to choose with that bucket what we do in our own ward, that would help tremendously, in my opinion. That's all.
And on that point, and I just want, and I appreciate that very much, and I agree with Councilman Newman 100%. But this isn't the only bucket. You're bringing us a bucket. We got other buckets. This is our money. We don't have any more than this.
Right.
We have sources, like you mentioned, on infrastructure and other sources of income that are going to help us maintain roads and all that stuff. But I'd like to end I'd like to end my comments on this. Sherry Bell, we've worked with Sherry. This is our third term for me, and Mr. Lawrence has worked with her as well, probably longer. But she hasn't asked that much for this sportsplex. A little bit of paint, a couple of water fountains, a little bit of grass, or to reseed the fields a little bit. But there hasn't been that much out there. It really hasn't. That's a field that, in its heyday when it was first built, was a centerpiece of where we migrated to play certain sports. And Biloxi is not just A.J. Holloway Sportsplex. The beachfront that we're being able to enjoy the Sanger Theater, the all parts, Hiller Park. I mean, the many events that have been out there have been tremendous, and what's happening up in Wool Market as well, and other places in Biloxi. This is just what the mayor said. First of all, it started out, I didn't anticipate it to be kind of bundled into a $17 million bond. I thought we were moving, identifying what it would take to make some significant upgrades, not the coup de grace, but some significant upgrades. We'd pass that, and then we'd move on to Pops Ferry extension, and then maybe even if there was an additional paving bond for needs that we would address. And I still think that's where we'll go. I mean, we're not going to end it with this one bucket. So I appreciate y'all's time. Perhaps, Mayor, the administration can meet 3 at a time or one-on-one or whatever as we move to continue this process. I think it's smart to get out front and say, let's go ahead and get a bond issue approved at these lower rates. The council's going to make the improvements, whether it's $6 million or $200,000 or $7 million or whatever. These requests are still going to come through this council to make the ultimate decisions.
Let me ask Jason one thing. I said, we go past this thing, we lock in the deal, we got 2 years to spend it.
You do, and I want to be careful about what lock-in means. And just to real quick go over the process that we still have to do, we've induced the Mississippi Development Bank for that not to exceed $17 million. We still have to go back and get credit approval and approve of the credit committee of that body, and then their full board approval. They meet once a month. Our next opportunity to do that will be in April. So, and all that time, Jane will be getting the documents together. We'll be deciding when and how to sell these bonds in the market, whether to try to do a private placement with commercial banks or whether to do a public offering. All of that takes time. I mean, if y'all wanted to put the pedal to the metal to the day, you're still looking as much as 60 to 90 days out before you'd have the money. And you don't lock in the borrowing rate until you sign that bond purchase agreement, which comes at the tail end of that process.
So, timing is significant.
Yeah, the sooner the better, given what the rate expectations are going forward.
Let me say, in addition, by next week, we'll have, some items for your consideration. I think Councilman Newman made some, hey, you give me a couple $100,000, $300,000 to pave within this infrastructure. So, how we're paying it back, from recreation, it's kind of easy, some millage, but also the ongoing use tax can be part of the deal. So I'm confident that we'll have in the next week, an item list that we're going to go after, and we'll total it, and then we'll tell Jason, go bodies, get the money.
And also to emphasize, just again, as I'm sure most of you remember, the city has not taken any action that is not reversible and won't until that bond purchase agreement is signed. Y'all can do everything right up until the day we either do the public offering or get a term sheet from a bank or banks participating. If y'all don't sign that bond purchase agreement, nothing happens. None of the professionals like myself, the bond attorneys, none of us get paid. It just goes away.
And we're not locked into, even after that, we're not locked into any specific project?
You're not, because the resolution that Jane has drafted in the resolution intent, and it will be the same in the bond resolution, it uses the broadest possible statutory language that Mississippi allows, covering pretty much any conceivable purpose that you could spend bond money on. There's no requirement. Now, when we get closer, Jane and others will want to know those projects because they'll want to know what the useful lives of those projects is, and that'll factor into how we structure the bonds. But for right now, it's just wide open as long as it's within Mississippi law.
Right. And Jason's been dealing with us and helping us in a number of events and a number of things. Let me ask your professional opinion. This is the right thing to do, don't you think, as far as delivering what we need to deliver in the timing we need to work with?
Yeah, I mean, rates are not as low as they were last year, but they still are at relatively historically low levels. Most of the time when you go borrow, you're going to be paying a lot more than this. So it's still a good time to do it. From what I've seen my past few years working with y'all and looking at your revenue base, you can afford to do it. It just depends on whether or not you want to do it.
How much was that new D'Iberville Sportsplex? What was the?
It was all in, brand new Sportsplex was about $8 million.
Okay.
But that was built 3-4 years ago.
Okay. Thank you. Final comments, and we'll wrap this workshop up.
The reason we had the workshop so we could have the explanation of some of the things you want to do, and we're gonna find out how we're gonna spend the money. The only problem, I talk to people outside of this, they really don't have a problem with upgrading the ballparks and fixing, and the main street is a good thing. So run that all the way to Highway 90, that's an important thing for the city. But they all come back with the same thing, when you gonna fix my streets? And everybody hears that, you hear it, right on down the line, they can say what they want, that's the main thing. Nobody has a problem with doing something with the ball field. Do we don't overspend on it? No, we don't. You wanna do the best thing for the city of Biloxi. There are two people you take care of when you're in a political life, Popo, the old people and the young people. That's the name of the game. Never ever changed the last 1,000 years. So that's what we have to do.
Yeah, just want to reiterate, like I said earlier, the people on the east end have the hardest time getting to the Snyder Center for Recreation, and I think it's time for us to kind of look at a recreational facility in the old Lee Street Stadium Park, pre-engineered building, and I think that would be very appropriate and highly needed and very usable in that area. So I hope that's one of the considerations. Thank you.
Sure, the highlights. Pops Ferry Extension, Station 5 for the firefighters, Churchill Drive drainage, the Enclave Petty Board drainage. That's it. Just, but if I understood you, Mayor, a week from now, you'll have a list, a rough list
Right,
for us.
and we'll interact with each one of y'all, not a quorum situation, but we'll go to the,
And I wanted to thank Jason for being here, and Machado Patano and their representatives for being here as well. Thank you. Good to see y'all. Thank you.
Okay, this is going to conclude the workshop. I also want to thank the council members that showed up. This is very important. You can hear by their interaction today, the mayor, the administration, our bond expert, and certainly Machado and Patano for your input as well. This motion to entertain adjournment.
all right, great.
All in favor?
Um,
Motion passes.
Here's a rate note for you. Yeah, the bonds will price somewhere